Today, in the media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan, our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. Today being Sunday, as you know that Sunday generally we have one special series that is called Thought Leadership Series. And under that, the topic is higher education, the way ahead. Thought leadership series. Now, crisis moments, opportunity. Problems and crises ignite our greatest creativity and thought leadership as it forces us to focus on things outside the norm. Thought leadership is fundamental in business today and consists primarily of finding and sharing great information in a way that attracts and retains. Thought leadership is when a leader's thoughts are being used by leaders to lead others. Thought leadership, a narrative by understanding what needs to be done. A thought leader can be recognized as an authority in a specific field and whose expertise is sought and often rewarded. That can be an expert, a historical figure, or a wise person with worldly impact. In this series, we will be asking straight questions and we expect a straight answer from our guest. And as I mentioned that the thought leader is a wise person with worldly impact, today our chief guest of the program is really a wise person with worldly impact. And I would like to invite and introduce our chief guest today, Professor Dr. P. Subramania. Professor Dr. P. Subramania, welcome to our show, Media Conference with Lal Goyal.
Thank you.
Professor Dr. P. Subramania is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. He is having more than 3 decades of experience in teaching, research, and administration. He did his MCom from Mangalore University in 1982, securing first rank with gold medal. He obtained PhD degree from Mangalore University in 1992 in the area of consumer behavior. He worked as professor, trainer, and consultant. He published 46 research papers in national and international journals of repute. He did postdoctoral research at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University, England, on HRD policies and practices. He also did a cross-national study of India and Britain under the Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme during 2001-2002. He received an international award entitled eLearn International Award 2003 from Scotland, UK for his best research paper on trends and status of corporate e-learning and Indian experience. He also received the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Teacher in Human Resource Management in November 2009. He is down to earth, ready to listen, and eager to implement. Welcome, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, on our show once again. Now, as this format, I explained that here, this time, I am going to ask some straight questions, and I expect that you are going to give straight answers of my questions. Now, my first question is, as per UGC guidelines, admission to first-year courses for 2021-22 must be completed by no later than September 30th, 2021, while the new academic session will have to commence by October 1st, following the admission procedure. What is the position of colleges under your Mangalore University, Professor Dr. P. Subramania?
Yes, it's a very interesting and very relevant question. We should also fall in line with the UGC guidelines. And as a state university, I must listen to the directions of the Department of Higher Education and also the Karnataka State Higher Education Council, Government of Karnataka. Yesterday, we had a meeting with the Deputy Chief Minister and the Higher Education Minister, Dr. C.N. Ashwath Narayan ji, and other officials of Karnataka State Higher Education Council. UGC has given the broad guidelines but we have to stick on to those guidelines. It means, as you rightly said, by September end, the admission process should be completed, and we have to start the new academic year from October 1st onwards. But before that, we have got a kind of backlog. It means the 2020-21 odd semester examinations, because Bangalore University has got 207 colleges, around 85 to 90,000 students, and we have got 2,500 students on the campus itself. So it means first, third, and fifth semester of undergraduate programs of Bangalore University, 70% of the examinations were over before the onset of second wave and the lockdown. But around 30% papers are. So our first concern is we want to give 10 days time for the students for their preparation. And during that time, there will not be any online teaching process for those students who are right now in the second, fourth, and sixth semester. So with this 10 days preparation, it means by the end of this month that will go over. By August 2nd to August 10th, we'll be able to complete the pending papers of the first, third, and fifth semesters of undergraduate program. And similarly, the first and third semesters of postgraduate degree programs, because we have not yet conducted any exam for them. That should be over. Then after this, we will invite the second, fourth, sixth semester students for our offline classes. Right now, since 2 months, we have been conducting online teaching and learning process for the second, fourth, and sixth semester students. Then for the next 1 week for them, there will be review classes, because they were online. They had their own comfort zone. And now a kind of transition from their leisure time to a physical classroom kind of situation. They have to be disciplined and all those things, a new mindset is required. That takes at least a week's time. That is one thing. Second thing is, they may have got several doubts, or they want to seek clarifications from their teachers not online, but offline. So that opportunity will be given for a period of 1 week. Then eventually they will go to the next chapter and all. By September first week or so, they will complete the process, and the examination will commence from September 15th onwards, only for the sixth semester examinations. But for the intermediate semesters, it means second and fourth semester examinations, they will be evaluated based on a formula-based process. It means just like we had during the lockdown first for the lower semester examinations, formula-based evaluation process, and only the sixth semester examinations were conducted offline. Just like that, the same process will be replicated as per the UGC guidelines, so that we will concentrate more on conducting the examination for the final year degree students. It means sixth semester. Later on, we will conduct the evaluation process, and as soon as possible, we announce their results so that they can go for employment opportunities on or advanced or higher education process. That is one thing. For intermediate semesters, we will upscale the marks obtained in the immediate previous semester, not upscale, the downscale to %. Then the internal assessment secured in the present second or fourth semester, that will be upscaled to 50%. Normally it is 30% internal assessment. That will be upscaled or upgraded to 50%, so that we will be able to evaluate that to 100 marks, and the marks cards will be printed and given to them. So it's a kind of formula-based evaluation process. That is what UGC guidelines tell us, and that will be endorsed by our state government.
But it's a very, very tedious thing. So do you think the time is sufficient? Because now we are almost, we have covered 2/3 of the July. So now only 40 days for the, or no, not, about 70 days are there.
Yeah.
Out of which few holidays are there. So right. In this, you have to conduct the exams. You have to bring them to come to from outside, from the leisure zone of them.
Yeah.
as well as the new admissions. What about the new
Right.
admissions? When the admissions will start?
A new admission will start from August onwards, processing and all those things. But October 1st, they should come to the classes. That is what the schedule. And we have prepared very well because there will be online admission process also this time. We have got a unified university and college management system launched by the Karnataka government. It's a very ambitious program. That way, we have prepared very well. And for announcement of results of intermediate semesters, much preparation is not required. We were already trained the last year during the lockdown one. So we are prepared. And before the announcement of 6th semester results, we'll be ready with the marks cards of those second and fourth semesters. And we have got the question papers for conducting the 6th semester examinations already. So we have made
So all the preparations are there.
Preparations are done.
This time you are doing online admission. So this online admission for the undergraduates who has been given the results by say 30th of July of this 12th standard.
Yeah.
So they can apply the online.
Yeah, this time online and offline both, because some of the students from the rural areas or the remote part of our districts, they may find it extremely difficult to upload online. So for such students, we encourage them to submit offline mode.
So it will be a unified admission process for all the colleges under your university or the entire Karnataka?
Yeah, because we are implementing that unified university and college management system from this academic year onwards. We have got online affiliation. It is already in the process. It is in the pipeline.
So the earlier all the colleges were doing the admissions themselves, where the student has to go and take admission in that particular college. But this time, is it? It will be through the online, and the centralized system will allot the college as per the merit.
Yeah. Merit cum reservation system will have to be followed, and we have got a set pattern. We have got intake matrix prepared already, sent to the colleges, and there is no much change in that matrix system. Renewal of affiliation will happen even without visiting the colleges, because difficult, physical verification. But in the case of new affiliation or extension of affiliation, it means if they want to introduce new programs, if they want to enhance the intake, because earlier we had given only 60, now they wanted to have 80. In that case, of course, our local inspection committee will have to inspect those colleges and personally verify whether they have got all basic requirements fulfilled, compliance norms and all those things.
Because this time will be 100% for class 12 students.
Yeah.
Earlier it used to be about 70%, 75%.
Exactly.
So the extra seats are required in the colleges about 20 to 25%. So are the colleges in your universities are prepared with the enhancement of the seats, or they already existing and they were not filled up earlier?
Because here certain basic requirements are needed. For example, education sector is human capital intensive. All said and done, they require space management. It means physical infrastructure. The classrooms, in the case of science departments, they have to upgrade their laboratory facilities. So it means certain physical space and the laboratory facilities are given. You cannot all of a sudden increase it to a unmanageable numbers. But the question is, some of the colleges are finding it extremely difficult to increase the enrollment and all. But this time, they got the lunch space. They are very comfortable. In the entire state, we got 2 lakhs more. Normally 6 lakh students are there in +2. And all of them will be passed. It means 6 lakhs. Earlier, it was only 4 lakhs on an average. It means 2 lakhs additional students enrollment means physically it is almost impossible, keeping in view the present physical infrastructure of most of the colleges. We have got government colleges, we have got private aided colleges, we have got private unaided or self-financing colleges. That is one, limiting factor of physical space. Second one is human. It means the appointment of guest faculty or the visiting faculty. It can be. It's not impossible. It's possible. The third one is intellectual infrastructure. It's called the learning resources like library and other things. It can also be upgraded with a lot of difficulty. That's no problem. Then the digital infrastructure. Because now, thanks to COVID-19, I already told in several other platforms, the new pedagogy is nothing but 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It means whether you like it or not, 1/3 online teaching, learning and evaluation process. Then 1/3, of course, physical, conventional, face-to-face classroom teaching and learning experiences. Then another 1/3, because of the NEP 2020 norms, experiential learning on hands-on mode, so that there will be upskilling, because already the problem of de-skilling is there. So upskilling and de-skilling, reskilling will have to take place. From that point of view, 1/3 online, 1/3 offline, and 1/3 experiential learning process. It means invariably digital infrastructure will have to be upgraded. Otherwise, we cannot impart meaningful and effective higher education. So that will be the limiting factor. Then regarding relationships and other things, social infrastructure, networking and all, it will happen. That's not a problem. Therefore, physical space management and the digital infrastructure will be a real challenge for accommodating the upsurge in the possible enrollment created by this kind of +2 passing of all.
Now this centralized admission system, which has been developed this year by the government of Karnataka.
Yeah.
What about the charges, the fees structure? Will it also be fixed by the government, or those colleges, private aided colleges or autonomous universities or colleges, there will be a differential charges in that?
But the Karnataka government and also Karnataka State Higher Education Council, they have been working on this. They want to have a unified fee structure throughout Karnataka state. Otherwise, students will feel very comfortable in the government colleges. Now, the Karnataka government has taken many measures to upgrade the quality aspects of the government colleges. Earlier, it was called institutions of equity. And the biggest challenge was how to create, build, nurture, and sustain quality in these institutions of equity. Because private universities or deemed to be universities or private aided colleges, they are known for upgrading their infrastructure, and they used to invest heavily. Of course, in the fitness of things, they used to charge higher fees than the government colleges or the state universities. But now, those are the days, that kind of discrimination was there. Now the Karnataka government, in the behest of what you call a implementation of National Education Policy 2020, has been investing heavy doses of funds and other infrastructural facilities to upgrade the quality aspects of government colleges. That's a very gratifying to know.
Yes.
Yeah, that is there. So that way, this time, because of COVID-19, even the private aided colleges may not be in a position to increase the fees of the students to a substantial extent. And university has adopted a norm saying that even though we have got the opportunity of revising the tuition fee, examination fee, and affiliation fee every year by 10%, we have decided not to enhance the fee because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic crisis experienced by almost all families. Therefore, we are empathic towards them. We are compassionate. Therefore, there may not be any increase in the fee, and these private aided, and sorry to say, there is bleeding in the case of private unaided institutions. They have to bear the brunt because we have to be very humane in our approach as far as the fee structure is concerned. And another thing is government is working on to implement unified fee structure throughout Karnataka state, because admission without tiers should be the policy.
No, but what will happen to the private institutions, not unaided institutions? Will they bleed further, or they will also get the good? Because definitely the number of students will get more because of this 25%, as you mentioned, Form 4. So the institutions which were not getting that much admission, they will get more students with some less fees, what they were expecting or what they were charging.
Correct. You're 100% right, because some of the colleges who are on the verge of collapse, they will recover very soon, because they have got the inflow of students, and unexpected enrollment hike will be there this time. That's one thing. For the next 3 years, for the completion of their undergraduate program, they have got a great respite from this kind of crisis. And in the case of other colleges, for example, government colleges or private aided, unaided colleges, they have got the volume advantage. Low margin, of course, but high volume. So they will be in a position to break even sooner or later, but they cannot make or earn profit this time, because it's extremely difficult to earn profit in the education sector because of the long gestation period involved. But they have to break even, otherwise there will be bleeding and all. They have already experienced, but this time because of volume advantage, they can make 100% utilization of their capacity. They can break even.
Okay.
Now they cannot increase the hike the fees.
Yes. Now you have mentioned that your Karnataka government has done for the entire colleges, universities, etc. of the. Don't you think this is the right time? Then the education to higher education, I'm talking, to come under the purview of central government. So it should be a unified syllabus, the entire country, unified admission, as you are saying, the centralized admission, and all India examinations unified. Right now, like earlier, you were doing examination based on your own university. You are having your own syllabus. All have their different syllabus. Do you think it's the right time now that we have a unified syllabus, unified admission, and unified examination throughout the India? Higher education only, because lower education, yes, it depends on the city to city, state to state, but for higher education, why not we go for that? What are your views about that?
Yeah, you talk about what you call centralization of education system. Right now, education comes under the concurrent list of our Indian Constitution. Therefore, central government and all the state governments, they have got a common platform to bring about reforms, and they got an opportunity to perform, and they got huge opportunities to transform the landscape of higher education in India. Then even when we understand the higher education at the global level, you take into account the European sector or the American sector and the Australia, in all those cases, they have not yet centralized nationwide centralization of higher education system. Universities are given what you call a kind of healthy autonomy to come out with meaningful research, innovation, and excellence as far as the performance of higher education is concerned. So is the case with India, because India is a vast country, and we are known for not only cultural diversity, geographical diversity, and multilingual aspects, and we have got rich cultural and historical significance. For example, in the pre-independence era, we had experimented with the infamous Macaulay's Minutes of 1835, then Wood's Dispatch of 1854, and the Hunter Commission in 1882, pre-independence era. Okay, then post-independent India, yes, we had what you call Dr. Radhakrishnan Commission of 1948, Kothari Commission of 1966, National Education Policy of 1968 and 1986, Yashpal Committee of 1993, National Knowledge Commission of 2006, Tandon Committee Report of 2009, and after 34 years, the third NEP 2020 chaired by Padma Vibhushan Dr. K. Kasturirangan is the first NEP of the 21st century. It had advocated more than 100 innovative ideas and daring proposals, starting from pre-kindergarten to post-graduation and beyond. And it talks about not only change, but transformation. And main focus is on student centricity, flexibility, and choice, unheard of all these things before. And not qualification producing institutions, but competency based higher education system in India. So it means multidisciplinary and holistic in nature. It is not monodisciplinary education system. It should be outcome based and not the output based. And the whole thing is Bharat, main focus, Bharat centric. It means nation first and character must philosophy. All said and done, we should learn by committing mistakes. Let us not repeat old mistakes, but we may commit new mistakes, no doubt about it. My philosophy is you study the past, pre-independent India and post-independent India. Analyze the present, the ground realities right now. Then project the future. So to me, it appears that we should decentralize the higher education, because the punchline is our higher education system should be locally relevant and globally competitive. So we need to benchmark the best practices, not only at the state level or the regional level or the national level, it should be at the global level. University has got its own autonomy. University has got its own mandate. University must have its own distinctive features. If we are offering same old thing in a same blanket form, then we will be losing what you call sustainable competitive advantage. We will not have any unique selling proposition. So distinct identity must be there. Therefore, the NEP 2020 talks about 3 categories of institutions: research intensive universities, teaching intensive universities, and degree granting autonomous colleges. All these things cannot happen overnight. Therefore, I am of the view that the present kind of decentralization must be encouraged. It should be sustained. Every university must have its own imprint, its own vision, mission, core values, strategies, and it should stand out in the crowd. That's what the National Institutional Ranking Framework talks about. And we have got National Assessment and Accreditation Council, so that we can prove ourselves and we can do things differently. Therefore, we can measure and assess our relative height rather than our absolute height. That's advantage is possible in the decentralized setup.
Okay, but Honorable Vice Chancellor,
Yeah,
can we go for a unified examination, at least the entrance examination for undergraduate, like we are doing for the engineering colleges? We are doing even for all medical colleges, like NEET has come, JEE is there. Why not we for the at least the admission, because the 12th standard assessment all over India should be one. We should have a benchmark about the standard of the education, so that if they have to sit in that examination, then only they will be given the seats allotted to the different universities or the colleges, definitely the local colleges, but they will understand that what is their marking and ranking they are having. Today, the situation is few of the universities are ranking very high and few are very low. But the admission process, if you see the IITs, they are ranking very high, but the admission, they have a different standard and they have a different ranking, but the admission is common. Similarly, for the medical colleges, can't we go for the university level, at least the higher education, at least the admission level, we have a unified, centralized, then the syllabus we will not do as you are saying. What do you say about that?
Yeah, this is a wonderful idea. State government is already incubating this idea. But for this COVID-19 pandemic and other constraints imposed by it, they would have done it this year only, because there's a high thinking about this kind of concept at the Karnataka State Higher Education Council. All the sitting vice chancellors are the members of this Karnataka State Higher Education Council. We want to have this kind of unified admission system throughout Karnataka state. Even though we have got diversity in the higher education structure, for example, we have got institutions of eminence like Institutes of Science, IIMs, IITs, and all those in Karnataka state. Then another thing is we have got private universities. We have got deemed to be universities. We have got autonomous colleges. We have got government colleges. We have got private aided institutions. We have got private unaided higher education institutions. It's a diverse structure. But still, as far as admission process in the entire state is concerned, definitely there should be a common entrance test. It may happen if everything goes well next year onwards. We are working out on that rubrics of that. And committees will be
I think that
constituted.
is a very positive step for what the
Yeah.
government of Karnataka is taking.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about the pandemic,
Yeah.
in other countries like USA, they have made it compulsory that all the teaching staff, all the staffs who are involved in a college day-to-day running, as well as those students, those who are going to get admission or those who are studying there, have to be completely vaccinated. And that's what their emphasis is. And they have already started the physical education in the universities, higher educations. Even the primary schools have also been opened in USA. While in India, we are still in the phases of giving the vaccination. But are you have any proposal that before admission, like time is up to October, and generally those who are taking admission in higher studies are basically 18 plus students. So
Yeah.
is there any plan that before October, all the students who are going to take the admission should be completely vaccinated compulsorily before they will be giving the admission, or they will allow to attend this class?
Yeah,
Is there any
yeah.
such proposal? Is there?
Yeah, idealistically speaking, Karnataka government and also Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Ministry of Education from the central government and all are telling, and the Vice Chancellor should try to implement this idea and the ideal of 100% vaccination of all the teaching, non-teaching staff and students. Practically speaking, 2 doses of vaccination will be possible for the teaching and non-teaching staff of these higher education institutions. Already we are at it. Then 1 dose of vaccination is possible for 80% of the students of our colleges. But 2 doses may not be a realistic picture. That's what the Karnataka State Higher Education Council and also Karnataka State Higher Education Department has given us the target to complete 80% of single dose vaccination by the end of this month, because Mangalore University has reached 62% of vaccination by now. But we are hopeful of reaching the target of at least 80%. If it is 100%, wonderful. 1 dose of vaccination before they come to the physical classes of second semester, 4th semester and 6th semester. But as far as first semester is concerned, double doses will be possible, at least 80%. And who knows, 100% possible, because October 1st.
Yes. And one more thing, Honorable Vice Chancellor, if you see the American universities, they made it compulsory for the complete vaccination for even those students who are going from India. And the government of India has allowed that for those students who are taking admission in US universities, if they show their admission letter, they will be given the 2nd dose of vaccination after the 4 weeks. I am talking of in the case of Covishield. Why not in the case of higher education in India, this same parameter to be applied, that those students who are taking admission in the universities, they are allowed to take the 2nd dose and on a priority basis after 4 weeks. So everyone will be vaccinated. After all, we have to see the health of the children and the students. And because of this reason, the 12th standard examinations have been cancelled by our Honorable Prime Minister, because he mentioned, and we rightly mentioned, that the health of the students or the young generation is very important. So why not such type of proposal should also be mooted out from the universities, that all those students who are taking admission, they are allowed, once they will get the admission card, they have to show that and get the vaccine, and then only they will be allowed to enter in the premises. What you say about this, Vice Chancellor?
You are very much true, and the Karnataka state government is not lagging behind in this. Already 15 days back, our Higher Education Minister, DCM, Dr. C.N. Ashwath Narayan ji, made a provision for this kind of priority sector vaccination for the students, teaching and non-teaching staff of these higher education institutions. Because of this initiative of the Karnataka government, we could succeed in vaccinating 60 to 67% of the students and nearly 90% of the teaching and non-teaching staff for colleges affiliated to Mangalore University. That's one thing. Then not only this, anywhere there in India, no problem. If they show their identity card and they are the students enrolled in such and such colleges, they will be given priority. This one, that arrangement is already made, and that will be encouraged.
Okay. Now I am coming to the national education policy.
Yeah.
We had 2-3 sessions with you
Yeah.
where you have advocated and you are very, very positive about the national education policy 2020. But given the scenario of COVID, because at that time when we used to discuss, COVID has started, but the COVID was, nobody was knowing that the second wave is going to come.
Yeah.
Now we have seen that at least 1.5 years has gone. From last March till now, in between, yes, few months, and nobody knows what is going to happen for the third wave. Now, in this thing, do you think this national education policy, which was prepared pre-COVID time, has to be revisited at least for few things, where, because like you have mentioned about one third formula and many other things which have now emerged during the COVID time, so that it will be implemented more practically, although it's quite implementable as you have mentioned, except the funds will be a constant. And now, because of the COVID, as you also mentioned, that to charge the fees, what the colleges were charging, and they were supposed to get 10% extra.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Earlier the colleges, you have mentioned that the colleges will be getting 10% extra every time, but this time it has been frozen because of the COVID. So now, I think we lost the connection. V4, are you there? Can you hear me? V4 News, are you there? I think we lost the connection of Honorable Vice Chancellor.
Yeah, I am there.
Okay. I think some.
Problem. Yeah, V4 is also there. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So my point is, because of these all problems which we have seen in last few months, do you think a revisit of National Education Policy 2020 is required to make more implementable after taking the consideration of this COVID time? What do you say about that, Professor?
You are undoubtedly true, because extensive nationwide consultations and humongous efforts were involved for the first time in the history of India while bringing out NEP 2020. Because 484 pages of draft NEP 2019, when we go through that, we could understand. And even the draft created this kind of provision for mid-course corrections and all those things. And this COVID-19 created an era of radical uncertainty. It was not a shock for all of us. But NEP 2020, as I told you already, it has got more than 100 innovative ideas and daring proposals. And they have got a 20 years of time frame for the implementation of NEP 2020 in a phased manner, because we are not imposing all these policy postulates to be implemented all of a sudden in one go. It's not possible. To add fuel to the fire, COVID-19 created a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability, and it put a sudden break, and we had to modify certain situations. For example, the Karnataka government is already committed to implement NEP 2020 from this October onwards, but in a very humble manner. It means they have constituted a task force. Task force has already submitted a report. They have constituted a committee. I am also the chairman of the Committee of Commerce and Management Education for the entire Karnataka state to prepare a skeletal framework. Then there will be what you call subject-wise subcommittees, which will be formed soon. And they will be ready with all these details by September or August end. So it means we will be implementing what you call, to start with, 4-year multidisciplinary holistic undergraduate program. The beauty of this is students will have got the flexibility. All these days, all these years, once they join an undergraduate program, they had to complete 3 years course or the program. If due to unavoidable reasons, if a boy or girl leaves in the first year or in the second year or in the middle of the third year, everything will be in vain. They must have wasted their time, energy, and resources without anything. They had to go empty-handed. But now, as per the NEP 2020 norms and as per the program structure designed by the Karnataka government for the undergraduate programs of all these colleges, like 4-year holistic multidisciplinary undergraduate program, such things will not happen. For example, a boy or girl leaves at the end of the first year. They have completed first year's course or the program, but not the entire program. They will not leave empty-handed. We will issue them what you call a certificate. And certificate program, just like a certificate will definitely fetch some employment, matching that qualification. Accordingly, curriculum will be designed. Accordingly, skill will be inculcated to the students in the first year. Then if a student or a student leaves in the second year, we will give them diploma. And diploma will provide them better employment opportunities compared to certificate. If they complete the third year, just like now, they will get a BCom, BA, BSc, BBA undergraduate degree. If they continue in the fourth year also, and if they complete 4 years, they will be given BA honors, BCom honors, BBA honors. And if they want to pursue their research career, then after honors, they can immediately register for PhD, doctoral program, that advantage. If they want to go for teaching and all, then eventually research, then they can join 1-year PG program. That is one thing. And last week, we added one more flexibility to the component because of COVID. Some of the higher education institutions may not find time to overhaul everything, the system, process, everything. So we want to keep the existing system, but with the flexibility, student choice. It means first year, okay, certificate, second year, diploma, third year, degree. Okay. Then we have got 2-year PG program now. If they come to the postgraduate program and complete only 1 year, then we'll give them BCom honors or BBA honors. If they complete both the years, they'll get to PG in commerce or something like that. So it means that is the beauty of NEP 2020. We can stretch it, we can bend it, we can modify to suit this highly resilient and adapt. Therefore, this time, as you rightly said, mid-course corrections will be there. And according to this, students can also have what you call blended learning. It means we have got what you call Swayam platform. That is nothing but the platform for Indian massive open online courses. They can earn and accumulate their credits in the Academic Bank of Credit, ABC, that can be used. And project-based learning, e-learning. So it means the students can also opt for new papers or new courses, like, if a science students would like to learn something like music and other things or dance, yes, he or she will be given a choice. Because earlier, already that concept was prevailing earlier in our choice-based credit system. Ultimately here, it is very magnified and many choices will be given to the students, but students should be mentored, they should be counseled, they should take a well-informed decision. But there will be a cafeteria of choices. Earlier, we had got what you call the problem of dearth of choice, shortage of choices. Now, of course, we are creating confusion of choices for taking other papers. But the beauty is, all these years, we were paying only lip service for vocationalization of higher education. But this time, we are giving special importance to vocationalization of higher education, then internationalization of higher education. Not only students coming from abroad, our students will also go abroad. That is there. Then signing of MOUs with the foreign universities. Then co-designing, co-developing, and co-delivering programs, dual degree programs, twinning programs. That will happen as per NEP 2020. And Mangalore University is seriously working on this kind of internationalization of higher education, vocational higher education, because 3 E's are very, very important: education, employability, and employment. All these years we have put employability to the back burner. So we are giving importance to this. Therefore, mid-course corrections are required, keeping in view the problems or difficulties of COVID-19. But these crises will be converted into opportunities, opportunities into challenges. Therefore, we will implement not in toto, but in a phased manner, part by part this time.
Okay. Now, Honorable Vice Chancellor, what you have mentioned about this diploma, certificate, and degree courses, is it applicable from 2021-22 session only, or those who have applied or those who have studied earlier to this year? Whether if suppose somebody has dropped, say 2 years back from BCom or BA, can he avail that system and get the admission again or not?
No, it's not possible.
So basically it is for the...
Because this time our program structure will be revised as per the norms of NEP 2020. Because first 4 semesters, it means 2 years, we have got minimum standard throughout Karnataka state. Then 4 semesters, each university will be given academic autonomy to inject the local inputs, because we have to make the degree program locally relevant and globally competitive. So that being the case, the students who studied in the past, they cannot have the lateral entry all of a sudden. But in this system, we have got the inbuilt mechanisms to encourage multiple entry, multiple exit, lateral entry, lateral exit. It means you complete 1 year BCom, you go away. You go abroad, you do something, you learn another thing, something like that, or you work on full-time or part-time basis. After 3 years, come back again, join second year. Then again you can go. So several multiple entry, multiple exit, but there will be exit routes are well defined. Minimum norms and checks and balances will be there, so that our academic standards will not be diluted, and credit transferability should be there within India and also abroad, from India and another university abroad. So that kind of global standards will be maintained.
Now you have mentioned 2 things. One is blended learning and another is global. Now first is blended. Yes, we understand the blending learning education will be the, it's really the today's need. But how our teachers will be prepared? Because one side the COVID is there. And second, you have to, because as per the national education policies, there will be a training for the teachers. Emphasis has been given in that policy that teachers will be trained. The refreshers course will be done. But here you have, because now you are starting from October, this blended learning, where you are giving the vocational training, everything. How the teachers, is there any roadmap for training the teachers for this particular blended learning?
Yeah, very much true. Because we should never put the cart before the horse. Put first things first, sense of priority and urgency. NEP 2020 says, teacher is truly a game changer. If the teacher is qualified but not competent, means that teacher cannot impart competency-based education. So it means, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a tough challenge for transforming these teachers to embrace the transitional crisis from the physical space to virtual space. It is not just PowerPoint presentation within the 4 walls. It is online. It means a different kind of mindset is required. Different virtual preparation is required. Internet connectivity is required. Bandwidth should not be a problem. then you cannot download the PowerPoint prepared by a foreign expert sitting in California University or George Washington University. And it was prepared according to suit the needs and circumstances of that teacher abroad. But this teacher will have to invest at least 3 hours of time to handle 20-25 minutes of online teaching. That is one challenge. Another challenge is, if you ask a teacher genuinely, do you require any training? He or she tells me, no, we are digital natives, or at worst we are digital immigrants. No problem. With the minimum guidance and support system, we'll catch up this. That's no problem. We do it. So they are not ready to confess, because confession is very, very, very much required here, because 70% perfection is enough. But you do it. You continuously learn, improve, and develop the art or skill of virtual presentation. Therefore, training is a must. Bangalore University has already given first 2 doses of training, but they require booster dose of training, because this technology is a disruptive technology. Technology of today in Zoom may not be a workable proposition tomorrow. It's just like riding the bicycle. The moment you stop, you will fall down. So that kind of disruptive technologies, teachers should be updated. They should be upgraded. They have to make, we have to make them what you call tech savvy, computer savvy. So that's possible. So training must be the integral part of embracing the digital learning mode or this kind of blended learning. Otherwise, it becomes a rhetoric rather than reality. It becomes just an eyewash or a farce. Therefore, training is required. Digital infrastructure is required. We have a sizable amount of money, time, and other resources to train them up, to build confidence in their hearts and minds, so that they will rise to the occasion and make it more realistic in nature.
Okay. Now, you have mentioned about the global tie-ups with the universities.
Yeah.
Are you allowed as a Mangalore University to tie up with any foreign university, or the decision lies with the central government or the state government only, as well as those private institutions, colleges or universities, unaided, are they allowed to tie up directly with a foreign university or not?
Yeah. Conceptually speaking, it is possible, but practically speaking, there are certain norms, because Ministry of Education at the central government level, then we have got Karnataka State Higher Education Council, we have got the Karnataka government, particularly the Higher Education Department, and they have already prepared and finalized certain guidelines to be followed, and we have to modify our regulation, which will have to be assented by the Chancellor, the Governor of Karnataka. All these things will be there. Formality is the formal part. The another thing is we have to have a kind of discussion with our partnering university, because there should be a proper understanding between the home university and the host university. For example, we are trying to arrive at an MOU with the Thiel College of California and the Mangalore University. So it means we had already 3-4 online meetings and all mediated by or facilitated by Karnataka State Higher Education Council, and now they have almost agreed in principle to have a tie-up with the Mangalore University for our MBA program. They have got 11 months program there, or it's only a student exchange to start with. Our students, interested students, will go there. They will study 11 months there. Their students will come and study 11 months here or 10 months here, something like that, Then our students and their students will get 2 degrees, dual degrees. MBA of Thiel College affiliated to that university, then Mangalore University. This kind of situation. But we have to comply with a few formalities, not many, a few formalities. Otherwise, there will be litigation problem and other problems, and the students and the parents should not be put to a lot of difficulties and embarrassment. Therefore, it should be systematically done. Similarly, autonomous colleges and private colleges. Because NEP 2020 says 100 universities in India, they'll be allowed to set up their branches abroad. But these universities must fulfill the National Assessment Accreditation norms of A+ or something like that, then National Institutional Ranking Framework within the band of 50 ranking or something like that. And all these checks and balances will be there, subject to these conditions, fulfillment of these conditions. They will be encouraged to do all these things. So it means we can co-design, co-develop, and co-deliver programs. For an adjunct faculty of a foreign university can be empaneled in India. He can be paid airfare and other things. He can be looked after very well as the university guest in Mangalore University for 15 days. He can complete a unit and he can leave. And in the foreign universities, a particular professor can go there, offer a 3 months program, conduct the classes, design and develop his or her own pedagogical innovations, conduct the examinations, conduct the evaluation process, declare or announce classes, and develop his or. So this kind of flexibility will also be injected into our education system. And Mangalore University is also thinking in terms of offering short-term programs offered by the foreign professors or any other professor in India. Retired professor also it's possible. So that kind of flexibility will be injected into our higher education system.
Okay. Now, two things. One is this, what we have mentioned is with the balance, checks and balances. Yeah. Are you allowing those colleges which are under your university, they can also tie up directly, or they have to take, they cannot do the tie-ups with the foreign universities?
Yeah, they cannot directly tie up with the foreign university. And in that case, Mangalore University being the affiliating university will act as a facilitating agent, so that they should bring to our notice and we will help them, we will mentor them, we will coach them. We will see that it will happen, because when they have got some tie-ups, it will also enhance the image of Mangalore University. Indirectly, we will also be benefited. But if we leave everything to chance or give to them, if they commit some mistakes as the gatekeeper of higher education or the conscience keeper of higher education, Mangalore University cannot keep quiet. Therefore, Mangalore University will act as a confessor, sounding board, mentor, and also will offer a helping hand to all those colleges. But the thing is, first they should deserve, then they should desire. It means they have to come up to that level with which they can partner with a foreign higher education institution. We will definitely support them and encourage.
Okay. Now, as we know that this many foreign universities, name like Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, they are giving a training or courses in different topics, many free of charge or very, very reasonable charge, but starting from 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and they are giving the certificates. And anyone from the entire world can join. Is Mangalore University is also planning to start such type of short-term courses free of charge or with some charges, very reasonable charges, and give those certificates to those who are not interested to come to the college, or those who are elderly people who wants to do something, or those who have like vocational and the national education policies thing. So suppose somebody wants to do some cookery course or some dancing course or some journalism course, he or she doesn't want to come and attend the class, but online they will be doing those courses in 3 months or 6 months by paying some normal charges and get the certificate from the university, or for yoga or many things. Whether is any such type of plan of the university or the government of Karnataka?
Yeah, government of Karnataka and Mangalore University, we have got several proposals which are in the pipeline now. Within a month we will bring out, because again we have to get the prior approval of the governor of Karnataka, the chancellor of our university, that is there. If we recall the motto of our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So Atmanirbhar Bharat for every Indian, because we should stand up on our own legs, no pains, no gains. We should work hard to earn our own living. That is what the first one. Second one is, as you said rightly, life comes first, then livelihood. Then the third thing is, we have to provide education, not for just creating a job opportunity for a student, or not even just fine-tuning the career prospects of a student, but we are preparing the students for their lives because of the lifelong learning mission. That's very, very important. So that being the case, like foreign universities offering many free courses to make the learning very versatile, multi-talented, multi-skilled, multidisciplinary, and holistic in nature, Mangalore University will also come out with many such programs within 3 months or so, because we have to make the best use of open learning resources, and we have got open and distance learning programs which will be offered by Mangalore University. We are already having B.Ed under open and distance learning mode. Okay, then we are also offering like beautician course, cookery, and some of the courses will require a lot of skills upgradation. Those things cannot be taught online because you can teach 5 W's: what, why, where, who, and when. But one H is very, very important, called how to do it, how to convert your theoretical knowledge into practical situations or solutions in a real life setting. That is possible only through hands-on mode. But such programs can be chalked out and they can be offered online. And we can also have 1 week contact program offline for such things. Therefore, blended learning will be possible. We may not offer many programs free of cost, because there is no free lunch in this world. One thing. Second thing is, if it is free, comes freely, then the learners may not show that real interest. But anyway, we will not charge huge fee. We'll only charge very, very reasonable nominal fee for all these online short-term programs. Program for a week, program for 15 days, program for a month, or longest program could be for 3 months, because we have got a Coursera online learning portal. They got many programs like SWAYAM platform of Indian massive open and online course platform. They got many innovative short-term programs. Likewise, inspired by all these things, even at the global level and at the national level, Mangalore University and the Karnataka government are not lagging far behind, and we are also coming out with such proposals for the benefit of the larger audience, as you rightly said, who cannot step into the portals of the university or the higher education institution due to a variety of reasons. So we will create that kind of opportunities.
And I'm sure there will be no age limit in that.
No age limit, because lifelong learning mission.
So it means I can also
Definitely.
learn, and for the cookery class I can join, so that my wife will be happy.
Yeah,
okay.
You can
Now
impress.
Yeah. Now, Honorable Vice Chancellor, you mentioned about skill training.
Yeah.
If we will see, the current data suggests that only 2.3% of the workforce in India has undergone formal skill training, as compared to 68% in UK, 75% in Germany, 52% in USA, 80% in Japan, and 96% in South Korea. Now, it's a Himalayan task to achieve even 40% or 30%. We are 2.3%. How we are planning in because the National Education Policy 2020 speaks about Skill India and give very thrust on the Skill India. Is there any roadmap Mangalore University or the government of Karnataka has made for the Skill India program?
Yes, 100%. Because National Skill Development Corporation of India talks about the problem of de-skilling of human resource. Therefore, there is an absolute need for upskilling and reskilling of our Indian human resources. India is rich in terms of human resources, no doubt about it. But the biggest question normally I ask is, are they truly resourceful? Are they truly skillful? No, not yet. But Rome is not built in a single day. 1,000 miles race will begin with a single step. Therefore, you have rightly mentioned South Korea, then Germany. Yeah, far ahead of all of us. Therefore, we are a very vast country, diverse country, and we have got teeming millions here. All of a sudden, within a short time frame, we cannot we cannot make them what you call 100% skill, or not even 30% skill. But we have to make a good beginning. That is one thing. Second thing, I already told you now, 4-year holistic multidisciplinary undergraduate program, honoring undergraduate honors programs. This program has got inbuilt inculcation of all these skills, because we talk about domain specific skills or the discipline specific skills and generic skills. Generic skills will include what you call soft skills, life skills, and it will teach you how to prepare the challenges of facing the examination of your life. That is very, very important. Then domain specific or the discipline specific skills will give you domain specific expertise kind of knowledge. So what we require today is knowledge, attitude, skills, habits, and values. So my point is, Mangalore University is talking about this skills upgradation, and every learner in a higher education institution should have a repertoire of skills. The first one is analytical thinking and innovation. Second one is reasoning ability, because you cannot leave everything to the chance factor, and either you have to convince me, or you have to convince me, or I have to convince you. We cannot do hit and run case. Therefore, reasoning ability is very, very important. Third one skill is required is leadership skill. Next one is technology design. As an individual, I should be high tech and high touch, because human touch is also required. Technologically, I should be superior. I should acquire all the skills, and I should be comfortable and conversant with all the insights. Then emotional intelligence and the adversity quotient, because you must know what is happening to you. You must know what is happening to the people around you. Then only you will understand how to build the relationships. And in the event of crisis or real tough situations, adversity quotient is very, very important. Then creativity, then resilience, because you may experience several setbacks. Immediately you have to come back to the right track and rise to the occasion, just like a phoenix bird rising from the ashes. That kind of resilience should be built into our students. Then critical thinking, 1 + 1 need not be 2. It could be 3. 2 + 2 need not be only 4. It can be 3 or 5, kind of synergy. Then active learning and learning strategies, service learning, blended learning, problem-based learning or project-based learning, the experiential learning, e-learning. Then complex problem solving in unfamiliar context. That's very, very important, because we teach them, they prepare for the examination, then they write in the examination, we'll give them marks. But in the end, employment sector tells me qualification is not equal to competency. We want not just qualified people, we want competent people. Then there is a yawning gulf between qualification produced by the universities and colleges or the higher education institutions, but competence is required or demanded by the higher education institutions. So there is a mismatch between the supply side and the demand side. That's why Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan rightly said, the end product of education should be a free, creative man. Man includes woman also, who can battle against historical circumstances and adversities of nature. Books are means by which we build bridges between cultures. Even today, it is 100% true. Therefore, what we want to impart in higher education institution is quality student learning experiences, feedback, and learning outcomes. Not the output, not the CGPA, cumulative grade point average, not just credits earned by you or acquired by you or accumulated by you, but whether those things are impactful. Can you create a meaningful dent in your career? So that way we focus on skills, and domain-specific application-oriented knowledge is our Shastra and Shastra. That is the magic mantra adopted by Mangalore University.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
being a man of wizard, I must say that of finance, commerce, economics, the condition today, you know very well, of the
Yeah.
many unaided, I'm not talking of government colleges, unaided colleges are that they are bleeding, and bleeding in the sense that the plight of the teachers, many have not been paid, or they paid very meager amount. And the teaching community is such a community, they cannot ask money from anyone. They cannot, you cannot term as like a MSME or whatsoever. They are a very highly respected community in India or anywhere in the world. Now, is there any plan, either the regulatory bodies like NCTE or the universities, to give some support, financial supports to those colleges
Yeah. I got your point. Some of the private colleges,
or there is no such proposal,
Yeah.
university or government?
yeah, I got it.
Sorry.
Now,
Yeah.
there are three kinds of problems in this world. First one, problems with full solution, 100% can be solved. Second category, problems with partial solution. It means 60% solvable component and another 40% unsolvable component. So salt and sweet. The third category of problems which do not offer any solution. Now, to me, it appears that if a problem doesn't offer any solutions to you, then it is not at all a problem. It becomes a condition of our life, and we must know how to live with it. So this COVID pandemic and the resultant crisis created by it, and the economic loss or economic drain, very inevitable. Even the God could not help. It simply happened. We did not wish it for, all those things. But anyway, it happened. It became a hard reality. Now we must know how to live with this kind of things. Another point, as you already mentioned in different sentences, education sector is the worst hit sector because of the COVID pandemic. No doubt about it. Even in the education sector, the worst hit part is the private unaided institutions in the northern part of India, particularly in the UP. We call them self-financing institutions. Okay, they are already bleeding. They want to come out of this crisis. Everybody is praying for them. Now the question is, sympathy is not required for them. Not even kindness. What they require is implementable action programs. Then they want compassion. They want definite, tangible assistance programs launched by the central government as a package for these bleeding institutions, or at best, the state governments. But the universities cannot have any independent package to salvage these institutions. That's one thing. But as the Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University, I have already thought about it, and my heart is with them, no doubt about it. That's why I have not increased the affiliation fee this time. Second measure is, for the first time in the history of Mangalore University, I am offering the privilege of paying the affiliation fee in 2 installments, not in one go, 2 installments. Third one, there is a waiver of penal provision. It means no penalty imposed by Mangalore University for late payment of tuition fee or affiliation fee or even examination fee. Even for the students, sometimes poorest of the poor students, if they don't have money to pay the examination fee, I made the arrangement. They need not pay at the time of filing their nomination, I mean, for this candidature for the examination. While collecting their marks cards, after completing, after writing the examination, after evaluation, after the announcement of results, at the time of receiving the marks cards from the college office, they have to pay. So this is a kind of action program done to take into account all these things.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, there is a fund called Endowments Fund, which
Yes.
are there where the colleges pay the some certain fixed deposits to the university.
Yeah.
Is it not the right time, because those fixed deposits are not being used by the even university? It is not a time that the university can release certain amount of, or they can ask the bankers to release certain amount, or say 80 or 90% of those endowment fund to those colleges, with a condition that after 2 or 3 years, when everything is normal, the same thing can be paid back on whatsoever the interest the bank has to charge. Is there any such type of proposal by Mangalore University?
Because Mangalore University doesn't have any endowment funds of the colleges. Each college has got its own corpus called endowment fund, created by the management or the governing council, or given by the donors, or a particular portion of the tuition fee accumulated over the years. Definitely they are making use of it. And some of the colleges, they have borrowed a loan from the banks to tide over the contingencies during this COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdown 1, of course, they managed. During lockdown 2, they borrowed loans, I know. But Mangalore University doesn't have
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
when you are talking about colleges, fine. Now come to the students.
Yeah.
You say poor and poor. Yes, we know that students have to pay the money, fees, whether
Yeah.
today or tomorrow. And you know, the pandemic has made so much impact, especially to the public at large, and jobless, migrants, whatnot. Is there any plan for those students? Like you earlier, the colleges used to have some scholarship or some fee waivers. Is there any plan to reduce the fee or fee waivers if they be able to give the certificate from the Tehsildar or some district authorities that they are really suffered during the pandemic, or their shop was totally closed, their business was totally closed, they cannot pay the fees. And because after all, they are also the citizen of India, and we have to educate everybody. Is there any plan from the Mangalore University or the government of Karnataka to help those students who have suffered through because of the COVID?
For example, we are also planning in terms of waiving the fees of those students who had already lost their parents and the breadwinners of the family due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That one proposal is with us. Another thing is we are also identifying the donors or sponsors of such children, for such students, so that we can help them. Then not only those victims, for any student during this crisis, we have made the arrangement of paying the tuition fee in installments, 2 installments or 3 installments or even 4 installments in times of need. So such provisions are already made, and we are also connecting the donors or the people of goodwill to come to Mangalore University and help these students, boys and girls, who are in times of need.
Okay. Now, I want to know from you, overall, how you see the higher education the way ahead?
Yeah. Even at the global level, there will be inevitable transformation. Okay. Come to India, my brilliant hope is on the successful implementation of NEP 2020 in a phased manner over a period of 20 years' time. The biggest challenges are 2. First one is mindset is the challenge. Because normally, we say we'll be very complacent sometimes, or we are arrogant. We say we have done so many things without this kind of policy. We are all right even without it. Why should we invite problems and come to grief later on? Or we will see only the negative side of NEP 2020 implementation, because central government says that it will invest 6% of GDP. But here, budget proposal is one thing, actuals will be entirely different thing. Sanctioning amount is one thing, releasing the amount is an altogether different thing. Therefore, sometimes we will doubt it. So here, what I'm trying to say that, let us not say it won't work. Let us think and perceive in an open mind, saying that it must work, it should work. Because all these years, after a long period of 34 years, we could get an implementable action program, a brilliant policy of NEP 2020. But we have to remember, it's only a policy, it is not a law. We have to create a conducive, congenial atmosphere, both by the central and state governments, and also universities like us, to have a level playing field and implement it. Second challenge is implementation. If you look back, we suffered the problems in 1968 and onwards, 1986, and we did some tweaking during 1992. We could not succeed. We could not reap the benefits of all these policies. Why? Non-implementation, partial implementation, or slow or tardy implementation. We may become the victims of all these things again. Therefore, implementation is the key. With the same key, you can lock and unlock. That is what I say. But I am very confident of saying that NEP 2020 is the game changer, and NEP 2020 will definitely bring about transformative changes in the entire landscape of higher education in India. That's what I foresee in the days to come.
Okay. And the last, what is your message for the students?
Yeah, students, they should be optimistic, and there is no point in having what you call self-pride, past glory syndrome. My grandfather was like that, this like that and all. You have to be very realistic, down to earth now. Third thing is, don't simply prepare or learn knowledge or acquire knowledge for the sake of writing the examination or earning your marks or grades or cumulative grade point average. Try to understand, if you learn something, it should happen through assimilation of knowledge. It is not just imbibing knowledge, assimilation of knowledge. Be ready, be positive, be optimistic to face certain challenges in your future life. You must always expect unexpected things. 3 C's are very, very important in your life. One of the letters of English alphabet is A, B, C. First C is courage to fail. You must be prepared to fail. In your first attempt itself, in your debut, you may not win. Don't lose your heart. Do it again. You fail. Do it again. You fail better. So that way, continuous learning, improvement, and development should be your pathfinder. That's very, very important here. So that way, you have to have this kind of courage to fail. Second C is confidence to win. I can, so I will. Present difficulties, impeding factors, retarding factors, problems, all will be there. Only one person without problem is found always in the graveyard. If you are alive, you have got problem. Therefore, confidence to win. I can, so I will. Third one is conviction to succeed. You should listen to your inner voice and watch your ethical inner compass carefully for seeking ethically sound directions. So that try to become a human being, be compassionate, humane in your approach, because understand the basic difference between human being and being human. I always endorse the second part, being human.
Being human. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, that you have given all my straight answers of my straight questions as a straight answer. And I'm sure today's program is very, very enlightened, and our viewers will definitely, and especially the students who are quite directionless for last 1.5 years, this program will give them a proper direction, and they will think that now the hope is there. Not only hope, there is a light, and the tunnel is about to end. One should go and take the advantages of the new or the National Education Policy 2020 and how the things are being implemented. You have given the first-hand information. I'm sure today's program is going to be eye-opener for those who are just criticizing. They were just saying that this education policy or the education system in India and the whatsoever happening is not perfect, but now today's program has shown, and you have even given a complete new direction, rather open the eyes of everyone. Thank you very much, Honorable Professor Dr. P.
Thank you,
Subramania,
thank you.
for giving so many good and straight answers of my straight questions. Thank you very much. And
Thank
today's
you.
program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat News Post, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And in our evening program of every day, that is Kal Aaj Aur Kal Lal Goyal Ke Sang at 4:30 p.m. Today, my chief guest for the program is, because this program Kal Aaj Aur Kal Lal Goyal Ke Sang in the evening is for those who have achieved in their life, or those who have become a role model for everyone, and their own life journey, their own autobiography from their own mouth. So today's my chief guest is Miss Bhavna Shah. She is world power lifting champion, and she is going to join from Mumbai, and she will tell her life journey, how in this young age, how she became the world power lifting champion. So please tune in today for Kal Aaj Aur Kal Lal Goyal Ke Sang at 4:30 p.m. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, for
Thank
giving
you.
such an enlightening thing. And I am sure to join the cookery class very soon, as soon as the Mangalore University will offer. Thank you
Sure,
very much.
sure.
And
Thank
thank you all the viewers for watching our show. Thank you very much.